Hi, everyone. So I'm going to go over just how to sort of like build and polish and create your Substack blog, and kind of what I want you to be thinking about in terms of how you build that blog, right? So at this point, you should have at least two posts, right? Which would be your review and your list sickle. You should also have your draft of your podcast, and you will quickly kind of move into your rant, right? Which is another text post, really, right? Um, Although you can add audio, video, images, right? Whatever you want to make it more interesting. So you will have 4 posts that will live on your Substack blog. And what I want you to do is to revise your review and your list sickle with the information that you have about how to develop your persona and your message and your audience. What have you learned throughout writing and drafting those pieces and looking at what other people have done and thinking about the readings? How can you revise those 2 original posts so that you really make them more your own rather than sort of just generic content? And then how do you do the same with your podcast and also with your rant, right? And so then at the end, you've got those 4 pieces that you're going to be working on to put into your Substack blog platform, right? Account. And then how do you organize that visually so that people that come onto your blog can get to your content quickly and understand what your blog is about very quickly, right? So you'll have those 4 posts, right? And you will have an about page. And again, your about page can be as like complicated and profuse or more on the simple side. I don't want you to just have like one line on your about page, okay? I want you to give it like some good solid context. And I'm going to be developing, well, you can look at my about right now and you can see, you can see, how I've shaped mine. I didn't add a photo of myself, but maybe I will. So it really depends on what your take is, and how do you approach your about, okay? I'm going to show you some things on the back end of Substack. And if we look at, if we look at this notebook 6, designing and shaping your Substack, if you go through this and you're like, oh my God, right, this is going to take me a million years. I get that, but it's not really that, right? Think about like the fact that you already have like your map, right? You have your blog proposal. You can use the text that is already in your blog proposal, right? You might want to reshape it. You might want to develop it a little bit more, but you already have like quite a bit there, okay? When we think about these deceptively simple questions, it's really just, again, about how do you continue to develop and shape your blog, your language, when you are thinking about what Substack is really about, right? And what it is really about is to have a publication and to build something that you can expand to broader audiences, right? You want to have, if you're thinking about this, you want to have thousands of people come into your blog and reading what you're posting, right? Maybe not for this class, but if you think about it in that way, then you're like, okay, I have to really create something that people can understand, that they will come back to, that can answer the question, right? Why will readers rally around this writing? Why will they keep coming back to my blog? Okay. And so these are really important questions. And so when you are thinking about your about, continue to consider, what is your persona? What is your audience? And what I really want to see is how has your thinking developed and changed from when you originally wrote about your message, audience, and persona to now, right? So that's kind of really what I want to see here. Hopefully what that will do is really help you to shape your about page and a one-line description. Okay. You again have most likely answers to these questions already. Okay. It's not new. It's just, how are you thinking and rethinking about it? And so, your about page should have a personal bio. You might want to include, what topic areas you focus on, what kind of posts you have. You might want to imply, what does your publication do for readers, and your intended audience? And this can be as simple as, my publication, my blog brings readers joy and insight about questions about relationships. It doesn't have to be it could also be way complicated, like this publication dives deeply into the intricacies of the political landscape in the Eastern European bloc countries and blah, 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 right? So it can be complicated. It can be straightforward. Okay. These things I want you to think about: newsletter logistics, subscriber benefits, a call to action, because you have to remember, and you may not have realized this even to this point, that Substack is a newsletter. Essentially, you are making these blog posts so that you can create an audience and have a database of their emails that you can then send this newsletter out to every week, every month, on a regular basis, so that you can develop that audience. And sometimes that can be super overwhelming. And I'll show you an example. This is a Substack. This is a writer, Mary Gateskill, and she's a fiction writer, and I love her fiction. And she's been writing essays for quite a while about just different things she's thinking about and writing about, and it's really great. But this is September 8th, so I just got this, and she's saying, I'm just going to step out for a bit, right? And she's saying, I have to take a break because I've been trying to work on fiction and I've been trying to do my Substack and it's not working. It's just too much, right? So I'm going to suspend subscriptions, and in 3 to 4 months, I'm going to come back and then I'm going to post. And so she's explaining to people who have subscribed to her Substack and paid for it, of which I am actually a paid subscriber, that she is just going to take a break for a little while, right? And so this is the great part of Substack. And she says this is why I've enjoyed Substack. It's a combination of social and private, a kind of physical aloneness happening alongside social engagement in near simultaneity, right? It's inner and outer. It's you as a person and a blogger, but it's also sending this information out into the world, and it's creating a community, right? So that's really what Substack is for, is this moving in and out and creating a communication and developing an audience that's like a community, really, right? So you need to kind of, in your about, you need to think about, how do I express this to my community, right? And you have to imagine that you have a community. Right now you don't, but imagine that you did, okay? And then you can think of, like, do I want to add anything? Do I want to add images? Do I want to have a little description? Do I want to pretend, that I have like some testimonials or compliments? all of these are different possibilities for you to add. And then after you've done that, you want to move into building a home for your publication, right? And also defining a brand identity. And this is where we go back to Canva, right? So you can create a logo for your Substack blog, okay? And then you can edit, let's see, where am I going? Here we go. Then you can go ahead and edit your architecture here of your blog. So what you do is you go here, I'm going to go to writing web content. And here it gives me sort of like the back end. And here, if I go to settings, this is where I can really organize what people see on the front, right? So hold on just a second. So, here's where I can go in and I can say, oh, here's a description, right? This is my one-line description, right? I can add categories so that people can access my page. I can have an about page. I can choose to have a welcome email or not. It's a good idea to do that. Recommendation blurbs. This is like a whole other thing, right? And then you can have like a word mark, right? That would be, and then a cover photo. Both of those are what you can create using Canva, okay? So once you create those, you can upload those. You can say you can receive email replies, et cetera, et cetera. And then you get to website, and this is where you can go ahead and you can customize, right? Over here, you can customize your theme. You can customize the background of your site, right? I do love pink, so I might just keep it there. You can change your accent color. I love pink and green together, actually. Those are my favorites. So, accent color would be like for buttons, for example, right? I can change the font. So maybe I want to do a sans serif. And for the body, maybe I want to do a fancy serif. Okay, these are all things that you can do, right? You can change your posts, you can list them, which would mean it would list. I personally like a grid, but that's the way, you can make all of these changes, right? So now I set theme. Okay. And you can do that with homepage links, colored, play around with what your customization is. I think actually if I go there, I can even, look at my post as well. And I can organize my posts differently, right? I could say, let's see, this is a magazine. So how do I want to organize this? You just have to really play around. These are really your sort of like writerly choices. And you can also choose in this navigation what links show up in the bar at the top of your website. So when I go to my writing web content website, I have home, magazine, weekly post, archive, and about. You can add, so many sections here. You could have, podcast, you could have interviews, you could have any kind of content that you want. You could put it there, right? But, I don't really want to have a magazine. So I'm going to go ahead and delete that. Yep, I do want to delete it. I don't really want to have like a weekly post right now. So I'm just going to delete that too. And so what I end up having is a homepage. an archive, which I think you have to have, because that's actually just where your posts are all archived, and then an about page. I could create a new page where I could say, let's say interviews. And then I continue. This page is for everyone. See how I could change this? And I could say it's only for paid subscribers, but I don't have paid subscribers. And so now I have, an interview page. Okay. Or I can say, okay, I do want to add these pages to my navigation bar. Here I go. And now if I go to my page and I update it, I have home, interviews, archive, and about. I won't have anything under interviews because I haven't done any interviews, but under my archive, I'll have all my posts. And on my homepage, I'll have all my posts, okay? So now I'm like, oh, you know what? I don't actually have any interviews, so I'm just going to delete this. And so now I've created just a very simple page where I have my home, my archive, and my about. Okay. And so you can make all these changes. You can set up payments. It can get very complicated. It's basically like you're running a magazine, essentially, right? You can add new sections. You could set up a podcast. I'm not going to require you to do this for your podcast because it can get more complicated. You can just put your podcast on your Substack blog as a post, okay? Because you don't need to mess with necessarily creating a whole other section. I mean, if you wanted to, you can, right? You can create a new section, which would have to create an audience list, and, it's up to you. Play around with it if you want to, right? I'm not going to be mad at you about it, as long as your podcast is up on your site, okay? So just kind of look around and what's happening on this back end, right? What do all these things mean? And you may not understand all of them because they may not all be relevant to you right now. But I think checking it out and just going like, what are these things? I didn't even realize I could do all this stuff, right? For example, notifications would be if you did have an audience and you were sending out newsletters every week or every month, you would want to be controlling how, the information. How do you monitor this? Think of it as a business. How do you monitor your audience, your emails? It's like, if you've ever been on Instagram or anything like that, your likes, your followers, etc., right? So this is how you can control that, right? And you can see your stats, you can see, pretty much everything. It gets really micro. We are not even going over the chat or the notes functions on Substack because it gets, so detailed. And we don't really need to do that. Really, for you, I'm just interested in you creating a basic site that is very clear, right? So when you look at my site now, you see writing web content, home, you can go on my archive and you can see I've got my posts here, right? If you go to my about, you understand what I'm doing here, what it's for, about me, right? You have different ways in which you could access more information about me. When you look over here, there's an image of me. There's, a community of UC Santa Barbara undergraduate writers creating content for the web. You can see like this description. There are recommendations of different blogs that I follow. And then, of course, if I'm following those blogs, they will follow me, and that also creates community. So you may want to play around with the recommendations a little bit too, right? and you can see how many people that I recommend. You can view stats, right? Which nobody has really recommended me back and forth because I don't have any content. So these are all things that I just want you to kind of like look at and play with and think about, like, how would I use this, right? How do I want to set this up? Like right now, when I look at this, what's missing here? Well, I like this, this header here. I like these pictures. They kind of go together. What's missing here? Oh, there's no image. This cat meme, as cute as it is not working here. So I need to figure out how to change that, right? So, just start kind of going through this, building it, thinking about it. And when you go to, excuse me, when you are thinking about these things about building a home, defining a brand identity, deciding a reader journey, you're really just thinking about, how do I create these aspects of my blogs, of my posts, right? How do I develop these aspects of my blog to keep readers coming back? Okay. I think that's what I've got for you today. Again, I'm looking forward to what you put together. Please let me know if you have any questions. And I'll be posting something about the rant as well. All right, take care. Thanks.